I've come to talk to you tonight about national unity, the strength of the nation. I wish the skies were clear. I wish the waters were calm. I wish we enjoyed the certainty and the security that we once enjoyed. We have recently been reduced to just pigmentation, Negro Americans. They call us now the blacks.
Yes, I'm black. I'm proud of it. I'm black and beautiful.
One adjective explains all of us. Not doctors, lawyers, businessmen, laborers, preachers, the blacks. This nation today is more insecure in all of its history. Enemies around us, both home and abroad. We face one of the greatest military machines since the days of Napoleon, and they are determined that we will not last.
The display of military power is impressive.
We have within our borders divisions,
demonstrations continue to mar the president's travel.
fears, animosities, misunderstandings, prejudices, conflicts, a will to destroy, group against group. These are dangerous times. There were some people who said, it is not by obedience to law, it's by disobedience to law that we can have our strength and our power and our security.
And we feel that we have to do it this way in order to bring the evil out into the open.
The Office of Economic Opportunity.
The federal government has sent out teams to find out what is wrong in the United States. Sociologists have studied it, and they talk about money.
Many aspects can only be successfully dealt with at a national level. For example, wages.
Well, I want to tell you tonight what is wrong with America, basically. The basic problem facing the United States of America today is we're trying to take a foreign ideology
Are the communists running this conference?
and solve America's
The
problems.
Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Young Socialist Alliance, the Du Bois Club.
There is an ideology which says that the future is based on class struggle.
We are poverty stricken and we have been at the bottom too long. And we are determined to come up.
That same school of thought, when it moves among people, if it does not find a conflict, it creates one.
It is necessary to create a problem in order to get to the real solution of the problem.
That ideology says that there can be no freedom for individual citizens until every order, every form of government is destroyed, but the one in which they believe.
That there must be a restructuring of the architecture of our society where values are concerned.
You cannot spend enough money to buy patriotism. You cannot spend enough money to buy loyalty. You cannot spend enough money to buy character. For morals cannot be purchased with money, and cash is no guarantee of character.
Can we trust someone that appears to be faithful to a movement but he's not faithful to his family.
King's relationship with the fundamental gospel of the Bible is absolutely non-existent.
Martin Luther King is the founding father for the kind of shifting, if you will, into America 2.0. And my question for anybody is, are we better for it?
Today's topic is MLK wasn't a Christian hero. We got anybody on the panel that celebrated MLK yesterday besides being off of work?
I wasn't off work.
Okay. Went off work. Was there any celebrations going on yesterday?
Definitely had to go to work, but there was a big celebration out here in Phoenix for sure.
Okay.
Folks love to actually get out for MLK Day. Since we don't have a mad large Black population, it's really a good day for everybody to like really get out. It's growing well enough, but it's still good to see that amount of mass of folks out. So folks really enjoy it out here.
That's not they was turning up. Any other celebrations? No? You guys don't care, huh? Don't give a damn?
Oh, no turn up. No. I'm done.
No, turning up for Martin Luther King Day is too much like slave shit to me. I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not fixing to go out here and the MLK parade, that's cool, but I don't even go to them.
Okay. Does anybody in the panel see him as a hero? You guys honor him at all?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't take away from what he did. I mean, yeah, he was a man for that. I'm just talking about now, at this age, Martin Luther King is not a great. It's not a big deal. It's just not one of them holidays. Like I look forward to Juneteenth more than MLK or Veterans Day or Memorial Day maybe. But I mean, it doesn't take because of him. It's just because of one. It's on a Monday in January. I want this holiday in the summer. Something like that's January. We just came back off break.
Anyone else?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think Martin Luther King did it wrong. So he had a good idea as far as what he was doing, but so that's part should be celebrated. What it led us into it is not in a good space. He said it himself.
I actually appreciate him for coming out and saying it and having the accountability for that, so we can always actually go back to it and understand that it may have been the wrong direction and possibly learn from it. He could have just took that to the grave.
Yeah, I can see the accountability. I mean, that's solid, but at the same time, there was no recourse. Like he didn't show a different way after he made the mistake.
We're gonna get into it, man. It sounds like y'all already some opinions and perspectives already, but we're gonna go ahead and wait. If you haven't already, hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys coming through. I'm gonna be playing an interview with Chad O. Jackson, so make sure you guys go over there and watch the full video. I will be putting that in the description as well. Thank you for this interview, and make sure you guys fully support him over there. Go ahead and run this clip, man, and let's get into it. Y'all ready? All right, here we go.
Americans. And so with King, it was just a big disappointment to find out the things that we ended up finding out about him in terms of the fact that he wasn't a real Christian. He didn't believe in the deity of Christ. He didn't believe in the virgin birth. He didn't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. He didn't believe in the literal existence of heaven and hell. Didn't believe that Jesus is going to come again. He basically didn't believe in the basic fundamental tenets of the Christian faith.
And you found this out through his own words, correct?
Through his own words, right. I mean, there's 7 volumes, and there's plenty more from where this come from at the Stanford Library. But, his papers, if you read those papers, you'll find that, by his own admission, he rejected the deity of Christ as early as the age 12. He said that he shocked his Sunday school class by rejecting the virgin birth and the resurrection. And he never recanted from that. He never backtracked on that or anything. He always
He
believed
wrote that as an adult, talking about the fact that when he was 12, he didn't believe those things.
That's
and as
correct.
he was writing as an adult, he was saying, and yeah, he was almost proud of that, saying, wow, I was a revolutionary against Christianity from a very early age.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. In fact, he didn't even want to become a pastor. He said he wanted to become a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. But he was talked into becoming a pastor by his family. And the thing about King, which is very interesting, is that he had something like a photographic memory. He was very witty, very charismatic, very charming. And then too, he had a front row seat to his father, who was a pastor growing up. And as somebody who was a great mimic, according to those who were closest to him, he can impersonate anyone and sound just like them.
Wow.
He had a front row seat to his pastor's cadence and the pacing of his preaching and his oratory skills. And King picked up on that quite easily. And so he was convinced to go into the ministry and to go to Crozer Theological Seminary, which by the time King went there already had a lot of Marxist professors. Those who were Marxists and those who were just proponents of the so-called social gospel. And King was able to take that teaching in, make it his own, and it would be the launching pad of his career.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. Okay, so what did you hear him say MLK didn't believe about Christianity?
That he didn't believe in the deity of Christ or the virgin birth.
Anyone else?
I mean, that pretty much sums up not being a Christian, right? Like, if you don't believe that Christ is a deity, I mean, you kind of aren't a Christian.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
If someone rejects the basics of Christianity, should they still be called a Christian leader? And why?
I would say not a Christian leader. I think you can be a Christian and question, you know, the basics of Christianity. I think you can struggle with it. You can fight with it. I think where the problem comes in is when you're calling yourself a leader of that. It calls into question, what are your intentions? Because if you don't believe in this, but you're leading these people that do believe in this, where are you leading them and why? And what's the intention behind it? What's the plan? Like, what's really going on? Who are you? And what are you trying to accomplish?
I would kind of bring it back and ask for those that are researching this, did you look in to see what it is that he actually did believe in to give more substance, not just what he didn't believe in? You know, because it's easy just to pick apart and push one part of it. But if there's something in the Christian faith that he did believe in, and maybe that was just a debatable thing that he could debate with other Christian scholars, then it now makes it questionable.
Right. I've seen a lot of Chad's work online, and it seems as though what he did believe in strongly was Marxism. You know, it doesn't it's not clear what his religious beliefs are, you know, fully Christian, but it's very clear that he had a very Marxist economic approach or viewpoint.
I mean, it's kind of hard to say that he wasn't a Christian. But you know, when he served as a minister in a Christian church, and he has a degree in theology. I mean, I think that if anything, he just questioned some parts of the Bible as the story is told. Because again, it's not very fantastic or hard to come to the conclusion that a woman is not giving birth without fucking. So, you know, the whole immaculate conception, the, you know, virginless birth and all that. I mean, I can see why somebody would question that. So maybe he just questioned it as a kid who knew about the birds and the bees, and then nobody was able to reconcile that for him. A lot of the times as kids, when we start questioning things we see in the Bible and in church, there's an adult to try to justify it, make it make sense to us, and tell us how it works. And they tend to use things that we don't comprehend at that age, and just convince us to believe them because we believe in the person that's saying it. So it's I don't think that we can say that he wasn't a Christian, given what his, I don't know if it was his pastime and then also his educational background were.
But that doesn't necessarily make you a Christian based on you having a degree in theology, though.
I didn't know the fact that he was a minister in a Christian church. That was the other part that I led with too. I knew that most people, when we have this conversation, try to attack the part, well, just because he has a degree, he went to college for this thing, doesn't mean he was the thing he went to college for. That's not the only thing that I said. He was a minister in a Christian church. How many people are ministers in churches that they don't, or for religion they don't believe in?
Well,
it sounds good. It's easy to say.
Good. I mean, I'm telling you.
I think that's why this entire thing comes into question.
And the fact that
let HD finish real quickly.
It says in the book of Jude that there will be infiltrators in going into churches and talking about the gospel. You have Paul that also talked about that there will be individuals that will be speaking about the Bible for ill-gotten gain. But however, even though they're speaking about the gospel, that's all that matters to him, even though it is they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I mean, you have an individual like Jamal Bryant that he would say that he's a Christian. However, the way that the scripture says you're supposed to live out the Bible to clarify you as a Christian, he doesn't do that, and he's a minister in a Christian church. Is what I'm saying.
Most Christians don't live according to the Bible and what the Bible says. I would say the less than 1% do. And then his civil rights initiative or idea stems directly from Christianity: nonviolence, peace, forgiveness. And then go ahead.
I was going to say the incentive to fabricate your association is a lot higher when you're in like a position of authority, a position of power, or a position to make money. So like, sure, the average Christian may not follow all of the tenets of Christianity, but they don't really have an incentive to gain from doing so besides maybe like their reputation, right? Like they might pretend to be Christian for their reputation. But like when someone's in a position of power in the church, I mean, it gives them a lot more incentive to be faking their Christianity, you know what I mean? Because it's like they got access to that collection plate. They got power over people's lives. They have influence in the community. They have influence on a political scale. So if you're weighing all of that into it, I think that's the reason why his Christianity is even in question, because I'm sure Lapeef's going to play more, but the person who was speaking, Chad O. Jackson, he does he's like doing an entire documentary on the history of Martin Luther King. And the story that seems to be being painted is that Martin Luther King was essentially a plant of, let's just say I'm gonna use the word juicy, the plant of the juicy community, in order to essentially influence the Black community with ideas such as Marxism and anti-capitalist ideas, so that community could, and also civil rights, so that community could use civil rights to further their agenda. So it kind of gets deep when you like really peel back the layers,
Yeah, I could see that point for sure. Like that's not a far-fetched thing it's not a hard concept to grasp. However, the reason why people are saying it, like what we talked about, was in the video were the two things. He shocked people that he didn't believe in the Virgin Mary, so I just addressed those two things. I didn't address anything else in the video because it hasn't been presented to us, so I didn't want to have a response to something that we all haven't seen. I know you've seen it because I found Buddy's page through you. So
okay.
If you share something I thought he made sense, so I followed him because of that. So I appreciate you.
Okay, look at that.
But again, the point is like people saying that he's not this thing or because he did this. So it's no different. It's like we find out these pastors, have freak offs. Like he was doing the same thing. He cheated on his wife. Martin Luther King had hoes. Like, so that just means that he was an infallible person. He was an infallible man. I wouldn't remove his ability to be Christian, or the fact to say that he was not Christian because he did those things.
But if it is true about what you're saying, that he did not believe in those things, then he would not be able to. He wouldn't be a Christian, all right?
I think there are a lot of people who are still Christian by belief and just not culturally or socially.
No, I'm saying based upon when it said that he didn't believe in the virgin birth, he didn't believe that Christ was the Trinity or a deity. Those particular things would disqualify him if those things are to be said to be true, though, right?
Yeah. If he said those things, those would disqualify him to a traditional Christian. But if that was his interpretation of when he read the Bible, that I'm nobody to say anything about that. And if the majority of Christians disagree with it and take that he's not a Christian, then you guys have that position. I just know that I won't ever tell someone they're not something just because of what they say or what they do, unless they're saying they're a man or something. Then obviously, we can have that conversation, because I don't.
Right. So you're essentially saying you're gonna accept what they not necessarily identify as, but you're gonna accept what they're standing behind, even with their inconsistencies, essentially, because everybody can be somewhat inconsistent in what they stand behind.
Yeah, because nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect at all.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and run some more of this clip, and let's get Ink and White and Trev in that. Everybody mute up.
Might not know the names and the terms that you listed earlier: the Frankfurt School, Angela Davis, Marcuse. Now, we have talked about those people many times, especially back in 2020, when so many people were like, what is the ideology underneath so much of what is happening? But not everyone was tuning in then, and not everyone may remember. So can you tell us, what is the Frankfurt School and this school of thought that is Marxism that you're saying deeply affected MLK's ideology?
That's a really good question. So the Frankfurt School, to answer your first question, these were professors out of Germany who fled Germany in the 1940s, and they were accepted by administrators at the University of Columbia in New York. There were a lot of pro-Marxist moves that were being made at Columbia. I mean, you had Union Theological Seminary there, where they were already teaching their seminary students with a very Marxist bent that was reminiscent of the kinds of teachings that you would get from Walter Rauschenbusch, who was a so-called theologian out of Hell's Kitchen, New York, who basically visited England in the late 1800s and was enamored of the tactics of what was called the Fabian Society. Now, the Fabian Society is interesting because these were intellectuals and elitists who shared the sentiments of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. They envisioned a communist world. They differed, however, from Marx insofar that where Marx wanted a sudden uprising, a revolution, the workers of the world unite, the Fabian Society, on the other hand, saw a slow, kind of incremental, kind of gradual entering into a Marxist utopia. They saw that it would take time by first taking hold of the institutions. And the reason they saw it this way is because they didn't see a revolution as sustainable. With a revolution, if you were to capture the institutions by way of a sudden uprising, there's still tradition, and there's still there's still a kind of hegemony that exists across the land that people will grow tired, and they will you will have a counter revolution, and you'll just have a lot of unrest and dysfunction.
Too much, too fast.
Too much, too fast. Whereas if you go this slow, gradual, incremental way, you can slowly change the minds of a generation, which will then change the mind of the next generation and the next generation.
It'll
and
last a lot longer.
Right. So the people who were the Fabian types were the more patient. They understood that, well, we might not get there in my generation, but my grandchildren will get to enjoy socialism.
So basically, the Frankfurt School.
I'm gonna stop it there. In plain words, what did he say the Frankfurt School was, and why does he think it matters?
Is that just me or is that JR?
What?
It's stuttering.
You can't hear me?
You good now.
Okay. So the question I asked was, in plain words, what did he say the Frankfurt School was, and why does he think it matters?
I think what he was saying was it was like something to do with Columbia, where they took a bunch of professors from Germany that had very Marxist views. Essentially, it's like a way of seeping Marxism into the curriculum, if I understood him correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, a space that worked on perfecting the normalization of Marxism over time.
Yes.
All right. I'm just going to put the definition up here just so people can know what it means. Yes, I haven't already. Make sure you hit that like button. Go ahead and share the stream while you're at it. Let me bring this up. Do you guys know what Marxism is?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. I thought you would.
It's anti-capitalistic. It says that history is driven by classes of people, that capitalism is inherently exploitive, which is the reason why, the people, if you notice, the people who are pushing the Marxists are trying to drop that name on them are also are anti-capitalistic or capitalist. So, just convenient.
More so socialist, basically.
Basically, the foundations for communism.
Everybody should pretty much have the same.
These are the people that complain about saying, tax billionaires. These are the people that want that. The people, and there are no wealthy Marxists. Like there's very few. There's not a lot of Marxism represented in the upper class or upper echelon of people earning money, because we actually understand how capitalism works. And the people who tend to support this is from a aspect of need. Like if we went this way, it would benefit me. It'd be easier for me to get ahead in this society than it would be in the society I'm in now, because in the society I'm in now, I have to earn everything. In this society, everything is going to be kind of like fairly distributed based on the class and where I am. So
another core tenet to that, to the Marxism philosophy, is that it's means of production. So the value created from workers would be distributed in a way that's not as capitalistic, or it's not usurious, is what they would say. Because their argument is that a corporation pays the least amount of money they can to support the top 1% with the labor of the bottom 90%, forcing what would they call it? False supply and demand issues, or creating a society where the bottom 99% wouldn't have, or the bottom 90% wouldn't have, based off the need to exploit workers' rights. I think that's part of the philosophy. I'm not a Marxist.
The end game of Marxism is just getting to a classless and stateless society. That's the end game. That's the objective. And the way they want to do that is basically what White just said. Like, they want people who work for somebody, who work for a company, to be exactly equal, or very little difference between what they get and what the owner of the company gets.
Can I add kind of like wealth?
The problem,
like they want to distribute the wealth in a way that everybody kind of has access to the same amount, so to speak.
The problem with a stateless and classless society, though, is that somebody has to administer the stateless and classless society to make sure that it remains stateless and classless. And that person that administers it becomes the new state and becomes the new high class. So the problem with communism is that it never works, because it always creates, it essentially creates it essentially creates capitalism every time. Another problem is that communism assumes that the means of production, like the things that workers produce, would exist if there wasn't a profit incentive. Like, for example, there's a lot of people who work in an Apple store right now, right? Like there's people who pay their bills off of the fact that they work at Apple. there would be no Apple jobs in a society that wasn't communistic, because the only reason anyone would have the incentive to create an iPhone is to make money.
So you saying you mean capitalist society?
No. I'm saying I'm saying in a communist society, we'd never have an iPhone because there would be no need for an iPhone. You get what I'm saying? The iPhone was created because some guy had an idea and wanted to sell it to the world and make a profit, and he created an infrastructure that allows so many people to get paid underneath it.
Yeah.
So there would be no jobs for people to really do, because there would be nobody creating businesses, because there would be no incentive to make profit.
And if you go before that, I mean, that's the reason why America became such a great nation, because of capitalism and taking the slaves, that free labor, and then being able to distribute all this cotton all over the world for a profit. I mean, that's what we pretty much was built on. How we got to the point of having even this power that we so-called had.
So, Cloud, do you think that there's any communist nations at all? If that's the case,
I think maybe Cuba. Right? Cuba and China. Well, China's not 100% communist, but China's like,
yeah, because they have Xiaomi, which
right?
is pretty much their version of, like Apple.
Right. I mean, Soviet Union tried it; it didn't work.
So
China's not doing
China
well.
has their version of things because they have to compete on a global scale. There are very few brands inside of China that aren't related to one another. So it's very, very few and far between where you'll see like something new pop up in China. But when people talk about Marxism and they get confused, like, well, how is that related to communism? It's easy. So like, Marxism is the concept. Communism is the application of the concept. So that's the easiest way for somebody to understand and stay with us in the conversation, is if they understand that.
And socialism is like the initiation into the concept.
And that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that what they were talking about is closer to socialism than communism?
I think I wouldn't say it's the initiation. I say it's a branch. I say it's a different application of Marxism.
They kind of interlinked to some degree. They're kind of cousins of each other.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just interjecting to your point. That's all. I'm saying that they're interlinked. The socialism, Marxism, and communism, they're all kind of interlinked in some regard. But at the end of the day, the goal is for somebody to have power so that it would need to be less people having power. Sort of like what they call unlimited power. That like in America, there's a limited government. In the Marxist, it's an unlimited government, meaning that they want the government to control all the power. That's and so what you see now is that's why we have these great divides between the Republicans and the Democrats. I don't know if we're gonna get to that or not, but that's kind of like where the issues kind of lie.
And socialism is more so the bridge between Marxism and communism. It's the how you get there. It's the okay. Well, how do we make this? How do we turn this into this? It's socialism. The distribution of wealth. It's the taxing the rich. It's the nobody there. There are no more classes. Shouldn't be anything special for classes. Even though if Clout works 100 hours a week and I work 15 hours a week, we get the same pay. Even though he worked 6.5 times more than I did. That's not a society that will ever breed strong or a resilient nation, because the people in those nations will become sheep, spineless, and weak because there is no struggle for them. Everything is given to them based off of the fact that they simply exist, and there's no competition. Competition is the strongest thing, the strongest driver and promoter of industry in the world. It's competition. There is no competition in Marxism. It's a race to the middle now. And it's not even a race. We're just all at the top of a slide down to the middle so we can all be in the middle together. And that's the type of society that when you see, I think it's unfortunate that they try to put this on Martin Luther King, because I don't believe that's what he stood for. I believe he stood for, he just wanted black people to be equal. He wanted people to be equal and, have the same equality and equity in the society they live in. And now that, everybody's getting this new, everybody's got access to the internet, all these things. There's like, it's like they want to come and tear down black heroes at some point. Everybody that we hear of is coming up with some type of issue. Like, unfortunately, not to compare the two, just the situation. They came after R. Kelly. Before that, it was Michael Jackson. And it's like anytime that someone is like a hero to the black community, there's something that comes with that shit behind it. There's always going to be an attack formulated by it, and sometimes it's rightfully so. R. Kelly was, like Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby was drugging bitches back in the 70s. Like, I'm sorry, Dr. Huxtable, that kind of undermines everything you say. But it's the fact that, like, if he wasn't who he was, that story would have never came out. If the Cosby Show had failed, that story would have never came out. If Michael Jackson wasn't Michael Jackson, the thing about him having kids and all the weird stuff, those allegations would have never been made. If he was like a Milli Vanilli, or you know what I'm saying, even like one of those other light-skinned I'll Be Sure type dudes, they would have never said anything about him. It's when someone has, is a beacon in our society or is like an icon, that's when they get attacked.
I think there's truth to what you're saying. However, just to add some more or like a little pushback, I think a part of the issue too is that we don't ask questions as to why our heroes are our heroes. Like a lot of times, like the government gave Martin Luther King a holiday, and we don't ask why. Like we just go, oh yeah, sure, that makes sense. He's a hero. He deserves a holiday. But it's like, this is the government that's supposedly been against us from day one, right? This is the government that supposedly killed him, that supposedly didn't want him to win to begin with. So to me, it should kind of be a little bit suspicious to us, the fact that they gave him a holiday. You know what I mean? Like, why did they give this man a holiday? I feel like we should be investigating things like this even more, because a lot of times I think we just accept the heroes given to us and we just say, okay, well, they hail this person as a hero and they're black. So yeah, they're a hero, we're black. Oh, I see it happen today. Like you see people like a Jasmine Crockett, for example. To a lot of black women, she's a hero. Like, maybe not to you, but to a lot of black women, they believe she's a hero and they don't know why they believe she's a hero. As far as they're concerned, she's a black woman and she's in the government and she's fighting for us. She hasn't passed no laws. She hasn't done anything significant in her position, but that don't matter. They see a hero. And maybe 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, they're going to be telling their kids that, yo, Jasmine Crockett was a hero. So we really kind of got to put some arbitrage on who decides who our heroes are and why they're our heroes, because we've just been given a list of people and we don't know why.
I think that women absolutely know why they view Jasmine Crockett as a hero, and it's not. I'm trying to think how to word this politely.
What?
It's not the polite women, the classy women, the ladylike feminine women, the good women who think Jasmine Crockett is a hero. It's the women who identify with her antics, the way that she conducts herself in the space where she shouldn't be doing so. Jasmine Crockett is the embodiment of the mom going to the store in a robe with her titties out and a bonnet, like all the things that we say a woman shouldn't do. She embodies those things in this group of women. So that echo chamber that she resonates with, those are the people that support her.
But
and
to these young girls,
yeah, it's definitely,
they believe that's heroic.
Exactly.
They believe that having that attitude in these spaces and those antics, they believe in their mind because of the conditioning they've been raised under. This is heroic. Oh my God, 100%. Look at her. She's defying the culture. She's standing up to big bad President Trump. She's doing what everyone's afraid to do. You know what I mean? When really, well, who put her in position to be your hero?
Like, I'm from Texas, so I would have never in my life thought that if I have to vote for, there's two candidates that I have to, and one is Ken Paxton. I would have never thought that there would be another candidate that would make me even consider voting for that man, given that that I was a young guy under his regime who got fucked over, with the family law shit that bullshit he was doing in Texas. The majority of y'all won't be familiar with it, but 2000s Texas was crazy, and after in his reign, it got worse. So seeing that that's who she's running against, you know how I feel like, just for an example, I feel like I'm a Ku Klux Klanman and I have to pick between two niggas. That's how it feels when I look at who I have to vote for to keep Jasmine Crockett out of office.
That is a phenomenal take.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Damn.
I'm going to play some more clip. I know DJ wanted to say something. Go ahead, DJ.
I would challenge the idea that the holiday was given only because it was like a 15-year fight and like constant debate and like 6 million different petitions. So I think a lot of things that happen for us sometimes get lost over time. We may, because cameras wasn't going on crazy back then, and the story isn't necessarily told to us constantly. So we may not understand the intimacy of the intensity of the fights that happen in order for us to get anything. I don't think most of the time we are given much. I think pretty much anything monumental that we do get, pretty much we have to raise hell in order for it to happen. Now there could be, some things that are given that are just meant for us to get persuaded by or get lulled by welfare. You know what I'm saying? So maybe something like that. But to me, that was a particular fight. And I would like to pose a question. Maybe we don't answer it right now, but is it possible that the idea of Marxism that he was getting into was possibly just because there was maybe a commonality between the rapid industrialization that was going on in Germany that created such a divide that maybe somebody like Martin Luther King could find common ground with that as far as folks in the United States in his own youth?
You would think so, but then when you look into like where all his funding came from for all his marches, when you look at who even wrote, like apparently he didn't even write the "I Have a Dream" speech. Apparently it was written by one of the Juicy people. So my whole thing is like, if he didn't even write the speech that made him who he is, like this is the whole purpose. Like for me personally, it hits kind of in a different way because as a kid, I used to have a speech in a frame on my wall. You know what I mean? So like that speech on the frame on my wall is like, these are the ideas that came from a black man's mind. You know what I mean? Like this is the dream of a black man. And to find out that that wasn't his dream, that was the dream of a Jewish man, you know what I mean? It wasn't his thought process. Somebody wrote that for him and gave it to him. It just makes me start questioning, well, why? Why did he need somebody else to even write those thoughts for him? What was their agenda in giving him those thoughts? You know, it's like, there's so much about him that's not what we were told it was.
There's only ever been
crazy to me.
In our country's history. There's only ever been 10 great speech writers or speech givers, and for everybody else of the speakers who've given speeches, they've all had speech writers. The thing that I question is that people say, I've heard that the bearded, long curly hair community wrote that for him, and I just question, like, well, how do we substantiate that? Because until we can substantiate it, it's just a claim. They try to.
No, apparently there's evidence out there. Like it's a known fact that it was not that someone wrote it for him.
There's evidence out there, but the evidence hasn't been made ready available to the masses. So the people that have read that evidence, if you make that evidence available to the masses, we may have a different interpretation of it. So I'm just not willing to write somebody off as having done something just because a certain person or group of people say it. But if it was to me, I think that one of the, like, Martin Luther King getting a holiday was like, how when your kids are begging for your food and you keep saying no, but then you finally give it to you, like, here, man, damn.
No.
I feel like that's what they did to black people behind Martin Luther King. They got tired of us tearing up shit. They got tired of us protesting about it. Like, okay, if we give these niggas a holiday, they'll shut the fuck up. And then pretty much.
No, it literally says right here, like it's a known fact. It says Clarence B. Jones, his personal attorney and speechwriter, structured and drafted the speech.
Yeah. Well, it's the first 7 paragraphs. Yeah. It's supposed to be the first 7 paragraphs, but the part where he, the part that hits the most with the "I Have a Dream,"
can you hear me?
From what I understand, that was improv. Like he was
somebody in the crowd even said, "Tell him about the dream, Martin."
Right. So, and that's the part that hit the hardest. So I don't know if we want to really take that away from him. When most people, like was said earlier, you know, don't
Everybody
even write
got
their own
speech
speech.
writers.
But
Yeah,
right.
everybody got a speechwriter.
Claude, do you accept that? Does that kind of heal and mend that part of your childhood that you thought was gone?
Damn.
Yes.
It's a tough thing because you know what it is. It's a tough thing because it's like because again, my whole life, everyone's like, oh, you know, white people take everything from us. They take everything from black people. You know, we created everything, and then it's like, well, if Martin Luther King didn't write the "I Have a Dream" speech, then that whole narrative is just like not true. That narrative is just shattered. Like if one of the greatest speakers of our history, or someone who's considered that great, like the speech that's like represents Black America, like he has a holiday, for God's sake, like he's the guy. And he ain't write it. Those aren't his words. Those aren't his thoughts.
So Claude, I'm with you on that.
That means to me that makes him almost not who he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
did he really
the most
really go to jail
words
though?
that you ever delivered are not your own. Then like,
yeah,
what does that even mean?
Would you feel the same way if you found out that Jay-Z had a ghostwriter?
I would,
bro. If I find out Jay-Z had a ghostwriter, and it would depend on the song. Like if I found out somebody wrote, you don't know. If it's like turn my music high. Like if I heard you don't know. If I heard somebody wrote that, bro, I'd never listen to Jay-Z ever again in my life.
But check it out. He was like, just think about this for a second. He really did go to jail, right? He really was a civil rights
leader. Did get hit by a brick.
He really was 26 years old during the Montgomery boycott. 26 years old. Just think about yourself.
But what I'm saying is,
man,
what if all these things were staged? Like, what if all these things are not what we think it is? Like, for example, do y'all know the story behind Claudette Culver and Rosa Parks? And the fact that Rosa Parks was chosen, that Claudette Culver is who that actually happened to, but it didn't actually happen. Meaning Rosa Parks purposely went on the bus. Like, they planned for her to sit on the bus and sit in the front of the bus. It wasn't like a natural situation that happened to her. Claudette Culver naturally happened to, but Claudette Culver was pregnant. So because she was pregnant, they didn't feel like she would be a good face for the movement. So they picked Rosa Parks and made her do this thing that didn't actually happen naturally to her.
It's still the same thing though.
And picked her because she was like, but it's really not though.
Because this is why it's the same thing, because they like, yo, we just had an injustice, but you know, she pregnant. Let's find somebody else and we're gonna replay it. It happened, but we just gonna replay it and kind of make it into a spectacle thing. It's the same thing.
Real quick, what I would say is this is recognizing how you can be more impactful. I can't be more impactful with Claudette. I want to get the problem solved. I want to get something done. It's gonna be more impactful with Rosa. It's just understanding what you got and how to make it work. I have no problem with that.
It's like a Lifetime movie, Cloud.
The problem is the impact. What's the impact you're trying to make if the scenario you're creating isn't real? Like, so for example, like if I'm presenting to people that, oh, I can't go to this place. Like let's say I know there's a place that says whites only, right? I know from the jump it's whites only. But I'm making it seem like, you know, like they just came and bothered me out of nowhere. But what it really was is I knew it was whites only, and I went over there to try to like get in, and then they kicked me out. Like that's very different. Like me putting myself in a situation that I knew would create a problem is very different than the story they told of her just having a long day and she was tired from work and there was no other seats on the bus, and so she chose the seat and they in the front, and so they made her get to the back. That's a whole different story than she planned to sit in the front of the bus to create a moment.
What is the preferred outcome?
So wait, the preferred outcome would have been her to actually have done what she was given credit for. You know that there's the barbershop when the dude that the entertainer plays talk about Rosa Parks didn't do shit. I knew of this story back then when he said that, and I was like, damn, he's right. Because the difference though, Clout, I don't think that applies to Martin Luther King because he didn't write the speech, because Martin Luther King still did the work. He was still at the rallies. He still was provoking change. He still was a thought leader. Rosa Parks would be the
who masterminded that movement. Was it Martin Luther King and the people that we thought?
He's never
or
been.
Was there someone else in the shadows masterminding that movement?
For masterminding the movement, they give him credit for being one of the key figureheads in that movement. And the fact that he didn't write the speech won't take away from that. However, What Rosa Parks did was almost blatant deception, because they put her out there because she gave a better optic, even though the message was still the same. It was just didn't happen to her. So that will kind of be like, someone using, like, finding out that your favorite action star used a stunt double. He's still a star. He did the rest of the work in the movies, but he didn't do that one thing that he was given credit for. So I would understand why you would attract for that. But the fact that to compare what Rosa Parks did and how she was literally planted into that movement, and comparing that to to Martin Luther King, I don't think those two things are commensurate to one another, because he still did the work. Rosa Parks didn't do the work.
All right. He may have did the work, right? But my thing is, like, the story is basically told as if, like, the movement was a movement that our people started. Like, it was our people's movement and our people were responsible for doing the work. Yeah. But the way the story seems to be presenting itself now is as though a completely different group of people created this movement and had our people do the work for a reason unbeknownst to us. And we're out here proud of doing this work, but the work was done on the behalf of someone else to further an agenda that we're not benefiting from. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you look at the civil rights movement today and how it's being used today, a million other interest groups are benefiting off of civil rights before Black people are.
Yeah, the alphabet community has, in the past, the past 400 years, the alphabet community has gained more rights than Black people have in the past 40.
Yeah, so, but what if that was the intention the whole time? Meaning, like, what if the intention the whole time is we're going to use the Black people and their plight in order to create a movement that we can take advantage of later on the back end?
Well, I can see that. I can see that. I can see that rabbit hole and why it'd be somewhat worthwhile to go down it. Just as it stands right now, like, I'm not going to say that the alphabet community was behind. I will never cast that aspersion or make that correlation out loud until I can substantiate it with cites and saying and verified sources. But the fact that you're saying the way the civil rights movement has gone since we were the focus, the alphabet community has become the focus. The great thing for us is there is no alphabet community Martin Luther King. There is nobody that we take serious, because just like with a Black culture, and all of their heroes end up getting knocked down too. They end up getting found out to be PDFs. They end up being found to be abusive. They end up found out to be stealing. So I think that benefits us. And I think that if that was the case, as you put, like, just say if I'm accepting what you say to be 100% true, not that I'm discrediting you, just saying if I believe in the idea, if that was the case, it's backfired like a motherfucker on them then. Because they can get married. Yeah, they made it normal. Yeah, all of that stuff, right? Like, mind you, I draw the line at LGB. The rest of that shit is dumb. It's just mental illness. But yeah, they can get married. Yeah, they got rights. Now they can be on insurance. So they did get a lot of rights. I just don't see what the thought would be if that was the case. I don't think that it would have taken so long. I think that would have happened in the 80s when AIDS was running rampant, because AIDS was running rampant through gay sex. So I would have thought that it would have come back through then. And if not the 90s, when, again, AIDS is still running rampant, but now it's more so through intravenous drug use. I would have seen that be their push then, and not in 2012 or 2008 when Obama gets in office. I don't think it would have taken 50 years to get there.
Well, based off what they were just we were just reading about, I mean, with Marxism, they thought it was a patient process.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So they would take 50 years because society's not going to react to it right away. Like, society would not have accepted everything that they're doing with the LGBTQ now back then. But you have to create and lower certain barriers over time, make people a little bit more comfortable. And that's how we get to the place we're at today.
Because the goal was to get,
because first it's civil rights. First we say, oh, everybody needs civil rights. Then we say, oh, well, this is another group that needs civil rights. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is, it simultaneously worked to eliminate Black wealth, kind of, because around that same time is when we had the first Black insurance companies coming about, first Black banks coming about. Like, for example, there's a bank in North Carolina that became really big. I forget the name of it. I think it was North Carolina Mutual or something like that. But it was a Black-owned bank, and they became, made a lot of money because at a certain time, Black people were seen as uninsurable.
Yeah.
But then after integration, all of these insurance companies basically used the tactics that they used to build their insurance business and swooped into the black communities and poached all the black clients at lower rates because they had more resources. So it's kind of like they were able to use this idea of civil rights and integration to kind of take away black wealth.
Was integration inevitable regardless of which way we went?
No,
I don't think so.
No, because if you look at Jim Crow, the black people during Jim Crow era, black people were doing fine as it relates to the family structure, and I think we were the highest rated of families being together, and so the goal was to from the white liberals' perspective was to make sure that that did not happen because we were getting strong. I mean, if you go back and you'll look, there's a guy by the name of A.G. Gaston. I don't know if y'all familiar with him, but he was one of the richest black people in America at the time, and he did not like Martin Luther King's movement. Okay, he was the reason that Martin Luther King got bailed out, because he was where that situation with the dogs and all those high schoolers got bit up and hosed down. His office was right outside, and so he saw that, and that what compelled him to even go in the direction of trying to help Martin Luther King, right? Because he saw that Martin Luther King's ways were not, it was against capitalism, which is how he made his money. He had a business school, he had a funeral home, he had insurance and things of that nature. And so he wanted to help because he saw that there was some things that were happening. However, he didn't know the undercurrent that was going to take place, which was going to be the deception of what we talk about right now, Martin Luther King being a Christian, because the idea was to infiltrate the black church. That's why you have the Al Sharptons, you have the Jesse Jacksons. Jesse Jackson flipped, and when he wanted to run, he was against abortion. I'm sorry, forgive me for that word. He flipped because he wanted to run. Because if he didn't, then he wouldn't be able to run. So it goes all the way back to with the civil rights movement, that the civil rights movement was not done correctly. He just should have been fighting for the upholding of the Constitution, because it is against the Constitution for him to walk into somebody's private establishment and to demand that they serve him, right? And then we applaud it because they tried to kick him out. Right? If that was to happen in a black person's neighborhood or a black person's establishment, and a person says, "Listen, y'all gotta serve me," we would be okay with the fact that he got knocked out, right? Or he got taken out on a stretcher, or whatever the case may be. So what Martin Luther King did was really unconstitutional in saying that we should be in here even though it's against the law. And it was a scheme of things to plan these outings when they went to do these marches, because they would let people know that they're doing these marches. Whichever march you can think of, he would let somebody know as it relates to the newspaper or some type of media to do such a thing. So as it relates to what we're talking about now, everything was a plan to divide, to make black people go against one another. And so that's where we are even now. And so with them having a statue, that's why I'm with Clout, because I was on the flip side of it. Like I was all Martin Luther King and everything until I started. For me, I had to do a research on black entrepreneurs all the way back before slavery. And then it come up to this point, listening, seeing that Martin Luther King, because of the civil rights movement, black business owners went down. The Black Enterprise magazine, I'm sure y'all probably familiar with that. There was hundreds of millionaires, of black entrepreneurs that were millionaires, but when civil rights happened, black people was like, listen, hey, white is better, so let's go over here and be a part of white. There was Killer Mike talked about this as well, that teachers and superintendents did not want integration. They wanted segregation, because what ended up happening was there were jobs that were lost as a result of integration. Schools had to be closed. Black schools had to be closed down. It wasn't a flip of where whites, Asians came to black people. It was only black people going to white schools. And so this is why I would say that I don't know about the Christian aspect of it. I would have to do more research on that to say. But as it relates to if he did it from a Marxist standpoint, I would lean more heavily to Marxism and communism and socialism because he actually was fighting against the Constitution.
The the only reason I asked if integration was inevitable is because it seems that when we do have massive amounts of success, there seems to be a larger pushback from the dominant society to either control or destroy what it is that becomes a threat. So that's the only reason I asked.
What places aren't integrated? Like, like what places can't people travel to, or can't they live in general? Like what countries and how many countries, or is this for the majority of places? Is there some sort of integration?
Most people naturally segregate. I do this study pretty much every year in my classroom, and I tell my students they can sit wherever they want to sit, right? Because I know I'm about to I'm a segue into something else, and they typically sit by their own. Whether it's girls sitting by girls, boys sitting by boys, whites sitting with whites, Asians sitting with Asians, whatever the case may be. They automatically, and I've been teaching almost 20 years. They always sit in segregation. And even when you go to the cafeteria, it's the same. If you go to a dance, it's typically the same.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So to answer the question, as far as where you can't do it, well, there are places where it's where they don't want black people. I can't remember. It was a country. It's a city somewhere in the United States, but it's not illegal. I'm sorry, it's not legal to you can't live here because of the color of your skin. There's no way that can happen.
Yeah,
the integration would not doesn't even happen now. Most black people go to where other black people are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So, Mark, what was your question? What was your question, Mark?
I asked what places don't have integration. Like what places are, like what countries in general, or wherever places y'all know. I'm sorry.
New York, man. New York don't got integration. Everything, I mean, like everything is broken up. Like would think
I'm
like
not
New
talking
York
about.
is like
I'm not talking about
because-
I'm not talking about self-segregation, because like he said, everybody does that. Like black communities are black communities, white communities are white communities, rich communities are rich communities, and probably mostly white, but they're rich communities and stuff like that. I was asking like what places in like what countries does the government or the laws, pretty much keep people from integrating?
What, the churches? There's no law against it, but
there's no law. Yeah,
one is the most segregated place to go.
Not anymore. There's no law against it, but there was segregation laws at one point.
What are the what's the church segregation?
People go.
It's the most segregated time in the United States.
Yeah, you won't see it integrated like it probably could be way more than it normally should be, but they're the most segregated.
I forget
we could all live on the same street, and blacks will go to one church and the whites go to the other. You won't see too much of them integration. Not even in 2026.
So I guess you could say North Korea, right? They won't allow it. There's another place we can't really mention that, but
yeah.
Okay. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so all right, but not a lot. But most of the world is probably people can go where they please for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I typically lean towards that we should have self-segregated on our own. I don't think legal segregation should have been the route in which we maintain the segregation through them. That's because we got to remember the time. It wasn't in a vacuum where it was everything was separate but equal and we self-segregated. It was the civil rights movement, all those things like the Montgomery bus boycott and the March on Selma and all the March on Washington, all these things. They was specifically to address what was essentially legalized apartheid at the time. It was violence that occurred. It was let me think. We weren't recognized fully in all our citizenship. We could not go in certain places. We were legally restricted from these things. So I agree with y'all from a Monday morning quarterbacking sense that segregation probably would have been best for us if it was self-determined. But for it to be state sanctioned, it pretty much ensured that we would be treated like less than humans. It was it was at a time that set and it fundamentally changed the way the America worked from that point forward, because you get the Civil Rights Act, which lays the law for women and immigrants to come in. If you have any immigrant black background that's not white from the 1924 Nationality Act or whatever it was, you could not come to America. So anybody that comes to America post that point is a direct benefit of the Civil Rights Act. Being able to work in these positions and not be so here's the thing, we self-segregating, and all the finance primarily is isolated in the people who pushed it over from slavery, which is why, like, I think Martin Luther King's
but that's not necessarily true though.
That the finances that created America weren't from slavery.
No, well, okay, that's what you were saying. I thought you were talking about the finances that black people had, because during segregation, black people had a lot of finances.
No. I'm saying there was
integrate.
Right. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that we had no finances post. Well, we didn't directly after en masse, but we did amass wealth within that period of Reconstruction and those things. What I'm saying is the wealth created via slavery was the engine that powered the United States forward, moving faster. And in a situation of capitalism where the wealthy can essentially set the pay scale for people to be minimum wage or whatever that is, because you have no actual control over the means of production and those things like that, then you can ensure a class slavery for damn near eternity if something isn't done to interject it. So I don't agree with Marxism. I don't agree with people taking all the wealth from one group of people and giving it to another, unbeknownst. But if it's based off slavery, then that would be reparations. So I'm 100% for that specific writing of that specific wrong. If it's based off of we all in a room, if somebody works harder and gets there and we're all in an equal footing, then yeah, I would agree with that. My issue is we can't isolate these concepts and then make it seem as though we're operating in a vacuum and it's just, hey, well, these people just did better. We don't, they just were smarter. They just were stronger. They just were working harder. They amassed all this wealth. Too bad for you. No, these people committed a atrocity, and that atrocity was a profit-based system, which benefited them to this point. And then the laws that were maintained from that atrocity are the reason in which they moved forward and they had to be dismantled. Again, I am not pro integration, right? But I'm saying that the time period that we are discussing was not the time period of today where somebody can say what's holding you back. They literally had things that were holding them back from moving forward. They were literally like if you grew up in an inner city, you know how the police act. This is the new version of police, and they still be on bullshit. Back then, they would pull you over, hit your tail light, take you into jail, accuse you of being drunk. You lose all type of random crazy stuff these people was doing. This wasn't an isolated vacuum. They were operating like this was common law at the time. So all of these things needed to be addressed in order to maintain the humanity. So I'm not the biggest fan of Dr. King as a Monday morning quarterback. But if I had been around in that time, then I would have been proactively appreciating everything he was doing, because it set the stage to benefit us and everybody in the entire world that's come to America post the civil rights legislation, and anybody that exists in this paradigm that they call the American dream and can lay claim to say, hey, I'm a citizen of this country. All of that shit is post civil rights, like for anybody that wasn't here before that. So
only thing I disagree that threw me off is this is an idea that I hear people say a lot. The idea that the wealth of America was built up of slavery. And that's entirely false. Like, if you really look at the industries that slavery was responsible for, it was tobacco and it was cotton. The thing that made America wealthy and have the wealth it has today is industrialization, not slavery. So slavery was the dominant form of income at the time, but you also have to keep in mind only like 8% of the population owned slaves. So there were people here working, doing a lot of other skilled labor tasks. Like besides, like slavery wasn't the only means of production, but I think a lot of people believe that slaves were the only way things were produced in America, at the inception, when it's like slaves really only did agricultural labor. Industrialization is why America became wealthy. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's actually at the end of slavery that made America rich. Like when the cotton gin was invented and they no longer needed slaves. That's what really made America rich.
Can you have industrialization without slavery?
Total monetary
Industrialization is the economic practice that made slavery obsolete.
Right, but
can you have it without slavery?
You cannot.
Absolutely, you can have
value.
Industrialization.
The total monetary value of enslaved people exceeded the value of all railroads and factories combined. Enslaved labor generated enormous profits without wages, benefits, or labor protections. Plantation owners accumulated wealth not by innovation, but by extracting unlimited labor. When the cotton was America's
oil, gold, that's where America got its wealth.
Cotton accounted for nearly 60% of the U.S. exports. The U.S. supplied the majority of the world's cotton and cotton-fed textile mills in the North and in Europe. This created a global economic network. They have a chart that you can put up on YouTube.
Of your
they show the growth of the U.S.
Isn't 60% of your production? Keep that in mind. That's 60%.
You said what?
60% of your exports isn't 60% of your production. Keep that in mind, because the people who live on the land, they use goods and services as well. That's where your economy is really coming from. The goods and services that are being exchanged by the people in the community, not just the exports. The exports is one stream of income, but the majority of the income built in America wasn't off of exports. You see what I'm saying?
Are you comparing national trade or local trade to international trade? And quantifying them as
the trade that's happening within a country, most of the production that's happening is for the people in that country. Like, for example, farming, right? You're growing food. Most of the food that you're growing is to feed the people in the country. Your exports just represent a percentage of your surplus.
The major export of being kind of accounted for a large 60% of U.S. exports. So that would be the catalyst for damn near every financial system that was created from there. So,
and you don't have to pay them.
Every financial system doesn't depend on cotton and tobacco. That's what I'm trying to explain. Is like
initially financed through those things is the point.
Yeah, your major banks are like supported by this.
Like, if you say Saudi Arabia, they're not only manufacturing oil, but that's their bread and butter, right? And we're talking about the export. So, and you can become completely rich off of your exports. And just the fact of how much money you saved. I think it was foundational for them to be able to even build the industries following that period. Just think about it. And if it's only 8%, just think about it. Let's just say 10%, or let's say 8% of the people in the U.S. are responsible for manufacturing, and they have no labor laws, no payroll, no nothing. You go and tear shit up. Just imagine if we were making something that's valuable right now, semiconductors or whatever, right now, you killing the freaking game. At 8,
if you're one of those people.
Yeah, but 8% is a lot.
92% of people. The other 92% of people are not eating off of your plantation.
Are not responsible for manufacturing now either. You know what I'm saying? And then you have to think of the scale, because how much it costs for production in every part of your workforce, which everything was manual back then, is free shit.
Yeah. And I mean, your banking system
it was obsolete. That's why they needed industrialization. Machines work more effectively than people, which is why industrialization made slavery obsolete.
Let me play some more of this clip.
Okay, go ahead.
Once they made the cotton gin, they didn't need nobody to be picking through cotton like that.
But you needed somebody to go through slavery to then make the cotton gin.
No, I got a question for you, Clark. I do got a question for you. All right. So you know what? Play the video. Never mind.
All
right. Play the video. This is about to.
Which you said came out of Germany, left Germany in the 1940s, fled to America, got into academia here. They took the ideas of Marx, but the tactics of the Fabian Society,
That's
right?
correct.
So the ideas of Marx, for people who don't know, it's basically communism.
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea that the proletariat, right, the common person, the working person is being oppressed by the bourgeoisie or the elites, and that capitalism is evil, and that, as you said, the workers of the world have to unite against the elites. But ultimately, it wasn't just about giving the prole's power, the working person power. It was about making sure that everyone was forced to be on the same plane as the lowest common denominator. So no one would have private property, right? You're not earning capital. We hear that those kind of mantras today: you will own nothing and be happy.
Right.
And ironically, now it's the elites who have many of the ideas that Marx held in the name of the oppressed. But this idea of Marxism is not just applied economically today, it's also applied
culturally.
Yes, and racially as well. So I imagine that as the Frankfurt School kind of got its tentacles into different parts of academia, into seminaries, the idea of Marxism really evolved. And it sounds like MLK was a big part of Christianizing Marxism and then kind of disseminating it to the masses. Would that be accurate?
That's 100% accurate. So his real name is Michael King. His father's name is Michael King as well. Now, what's interesting about that is that Michael King Sr. visited Germany shortly before the rise of Hitler. And he was enamored of the story that he learned while in Germany of the 16th century theologian Martin Luther. In the same way that Marx was enamored of Martin Luther. A lot of people don't know this. What intrigued him about Martin Luther is that here's a man who revolutionized the church. He took authority from the Catholic order and he vested that authority into the common man by way of the Reformation. And it's interesting, people should look at the writings of Karl Marx as it relates to Martin Luther. And Karl Marx said, and I'm going to butcher this, but he said something to the effect of, we're going to do the same thing as Martin Luther, only our revolution won't stop at the doors of church estates, like our agenda to secularize everything. And so Michael King Sr. would come later and he would be enamored of Martin Luther in the same way. And he would come back to the United States and change his name to Martin Luther King, because he saw himself as the American version of Martin Luther, and he wanted to revolutionize the American church into accepting the social gospel. And so he changed his name to Martin Luther King Sr. and his son's name to Martin Luther King Jr., but it would actually be his son who would go on to do exactly what you said.
Interesting.
In terms of using the church as a kind of hub for the dissemination of Marxist ideology.
Yeah. And I just want to say, as a Protestant, that I don't think the argument that you're making is that Martin Luther, the reformer, was doing something inherently wrong or evil in his Reformation. I would say that this is so much of what Satan does, is that he takes a movement that God put forth and something that the Holy Spirit is doing and creates a counterfeit and creates a satanic movement that might mirror it in some ways, but ultimately has destructive ends. And it sounds like you're saying that that's what happened here with MLK and his son. Right.
So, yeah, it was definitely a bastardization of what Martin Luther did. I think what Martin Luther did was a good thing. I think Reformation was a needed thing. But the blueprint, it all comes down to what Michael King Sr. and Karl Marx interpreted as a blueprint for their own kind of revolution, as if you will.
Question is, what is he claiming about these ideas? These ideas move through schools and churches, and do you think that is possible?
I think he's claiming that they were trying to influence Black people through the church, and I think it's extremely possible. Black people, I mean, especially during that time, the church was like Instagram for Black people. You know what I mean? Like the church was where Black people got our information, where the family met. That like what you heard in the church is deciding who you voting for, is deciding where you're spending your money, it's deciding a lot of things about your life. So, I mean, if I were a movement that was trying to influence the Black community, I would start at the church. that's what I would do. I would try to find somebody to influence the church too, because that's the best place to, even to this day, even
happens.
now,
It happens
when
now.
politicians want
You still
to
see
get votes,
politicians
they go
in
to
the
churches.
pews. Yeah, it happens for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Then, as it relates to the school, that's easy. It's a publicly funded institution. So I mean, you have to, and so that means it's the government. So the government is laying down the laws and the rules and things of that nature. It's a book, man. I wish I remember the name of it, but it was connected it to how the bearded guy did his, and it was supposed the way he took over for where the youth, it was a youthful movement over there in Germany, and then it came back, it came over here to do the exact same thing. So I could see the connection, because I remember hearing that story, but I read this book of where it was a parallel between how America was trying to run itself like the bearded man did over there. And so it's easy, because I'm even in the education system, been for a while. If you think about, I'll give y'all this example and I'll let it down. Y'all remember the No Child Left Behind rule? I don't know if you remember that or not. That was done by Bush, and so what happened was, prior to, and I'll give you numbers, prior to we taking the state test. I'm in Texas. Willie, you probably remember this, maybe the TOS test, the TABS or something like that. The passing score for math at the time was like a 70, right? You fast forward at the beginning when I started teaching, it was still about a 70. And then the last 10 years, up until this time, the passing score, they don't even give you passing score to the parents. They'll say approaches, meets, and masters. And so approaches, the number would be like a 25. So if you got a 25 out of 100, that would be considered that you passed the math test in the state of Texas, all the way up until I think a 52, which would be what you're approaching grade level. And then from there, it would be a 52 to 81 would be that you were on grade level. And then it would be like 82 to 100 or whatever, which means that you mastered it. And so the government has literally changed the standard of what passing is now. However, you do have to pass the student in your class, and you're only able to pass, you cannot fail more than 10 to 15% of your class. And then you have to have detailed descriptions of why they failed, what did you do to help them pass. And then you have to make sure you met with the parent, you call the parent to let you know that the kid was was failing. So it's obviously going on in the government currently. And so that's easy, and you dwindle out the teachers, the stronger teachers or the veteran teachers that are from the old school, that are telling students, no, you're going to do your work, and if you don't, then you get a 0. Well, nowadays in a lot of school districts, you're not allowed to give zeros in schools. You give them a 50 if they didn't do anything, right? Because the ideology is, well, they can't recover from a 0. And so students know that if I don't do my work, I'm gonna still pass, because even if you don't pass a state test, you still get moved on to the next grade level. And so what happens is you don't have anything to build upon, and you're a grade or 2 levels behind every time you move to another grade level, which is producing individuals that cannot cognitively disassociate things, and therefore they rely more on the government to give them the information. And so when we're having these conversations as older gentlemen, we're able to have these, oh, okay, I see what you said. Okay, I can see where you're coming from. I can see that idea. I can disagree with you and be okay with that. Your point is different from mine. Well, where it is now, you have to only look at my idea, and if you don't like it, then you got to be wrong and you're out. And so that's where we are in education today. And I was long-winded on that, but that's what it is.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and run a little bit more of this clip.
That really solidified his kind of Marxist foundation.
Really good question. So Michael King Sr. was a proponent of the social gospel. It was something that he wrote about in his unpublished memoir. And not only that, he would often go to these Communist Front organization events that were put on across the South by an organization called the National Negro Congress, but there was another subsidiary of it called the Southern Negro Youth League or something like that. And they would put on all these organizations in the South. They would have Paul Robeson, who was a famous singer in those days, who was a avowed communist. He would come and speak at these events. And Michael King Sr. would go to these events along with older Ralph Abernathy and Rosa Parks and others. And so am I saying that Michael King Sr. was a communist? Not really. I'm just saying that he was intrigued by a lot of the rhetoric that was being disseminated in those days, some of which he was preaching in his very own church, which Martin Luther King had a front row access to.
And sorry, but remind everyone what the social gospel is.
So the social gospel, which was popularized by Walter Rauschenbusch, is placing the onus on the state or the government to bring about equity by way of legislation and policies. It's using tax dollars to feed the poor and to build houses and to take care of the marginalized. That's where the emphasis is placed on with the social gospel, just put in a very elementary way.
But also it is that is also what secular progressives believe politically, but the social gospel specifically is saying that all of the things that you just listed, that's the gospel.
Right.
That's what Christians have to believe. That's what Christians have to do. It's less about denying yourself and more becoming a political activist for the advancement of those political goals, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's social justice with a Christian tinge. And so that's why I call it the social justice gospel. Because it's this, when you look at at social justice and the fact that a lot of secular activists push it in the church, the black church, many black churches, it's probably not fair to say the church, but in a lot of black churches, they push the so-called social gospel. There's really no difference between social justice and the social gospel.
Right.
The only difference is that one of them is in the church and one of them isn't. And so that's why, I synthesize them by calling them the social justice gospel. But the reality of it is exactly what you just said. It's this idea of God came not to save individual souls, but rather he came to bring utopia on earth by way of politics. And so you have a lot of pastors, so-called pastors like Raphael Warnock, there's too many to name, but I was going to name William Barber. But you have all these so-called pastors who use the pulpit to stump for political causes, more so than to call people to repent and to put their faith in Christ and to follow him. When you listen to someone like Raphael Warnock, for example, he never actually mentions the Bible without attaching it to some policy right now that's on the docket. The same is true of Martin Luther King.
We'll stop it there. If a pastor talks about politics a lot, but rarely talks about sin and repentance, what does that tell you?
What is priority? Just more of a politician. I don't think that's exclusive to the black church, though.
Definitely not.
Okay. What's going on, Mom?
I think it depended on the circumstances in which they're talking about it. So if they're like for instance, they was right early when they were saying that the church was a major factor in the civil rights movement, right? Because it led to mobilization. It's how they spread the message in a time when the internet wasn't a thing. And they had to get the word out and get people on code as fast as possible. So they would use the pastors to push these messages along with the several civil rights groups that they had and, flyers and stuff. So in that scenario, that would be a church operating in a political atmosphere for a specific cause for its congregation to right a immoral, illegal wrong or immoral, devilish wrong that was occurring based on the system of white supremacy. Now, when you move forward, I agree that it seems as though the church pushes whatever social justice movement
they are politically aligned with the Democrats at the current moment. It's somehow like they had just cause for the removal of white supremacy as a racial system, and then it transitioned to whatever thing the Democrats were specifically focused on. Like if you look at traditionally, churches did not believe in deletion of babies, but as the Democrats adopted this is a core right of women, then the church began to prophesy how it was important that they protected and marched and stood in line to ensure that women could delete these children. And or the LGBT agenda, like those things are core Democrat positions. Currently, the church has adopted to push out to the masses, and their argument is based in equality for all. However, the things that they're labeling that are equality are relegated to things that essentially in the past were labeled social or sexual perversions or non-moral things. It's not based off of the color of somebody from birth. It's based off the person they want to have sex with. It's not based off of them wanting to participate in the political system. It's based off the ability to delete a baby, and they've been able to weaponize that, and that is I think is blasphemous, and it's led to the removal and the feminist movement. Now, if they were just about pushing for women to be treated fairly and all these things, that's fine. But when they began to push for men to be emasculated and to change the direction of how men and women interacted with each other for a feminist way they viewed how men should interact in this world, they began to push a political social programming that led to men leaving the church as well. And yeah, I think they're so far, they lost the plot. I think they've lost the plot at this point. They definitely lost the plot.
I agree with what Marcus just said. I feel like they in the church they try to push godliness or like righteousness as equality. Like equality is the ultimate form of godliness and righteousness. And a perfect example of it is what just happened with Don Lemon walking into this church. I mean, here's Don Lemon, openly homosexual man, right? Who he professes to be Christian, but I mean, in the Bible, the very Bible, it literally calls a man that lays with a man an abomination. It says that in the Bible. But here he walks into this church during a church service to lecture a pastor, about church. And he's saying, well, wouldn't God want this? And shouldn't Christians X, Y, Z? And it's almost like they're trying to conflate this idea that Christianity or God and equality is the same thing, when equality is a human concept. Like there's no equality in the Bible, which is why God and the devil aren't the same, which is why sinners and those who don't sin aren't the same, which is why the righteous and the non-righteous aren't the same. Like there's people who are blessed and people who are cursed. Like, so clearly equality is not a biblical concept, but it's this human concept, this social justice concept that has infiltrated the church. And they're more focused on that than sticking to what the actual guidelines of the religion are. So I agree with that completely.
The only pushback that I would say is I would not say that the church. That's the only thing that I would say. I would say there
Some
is
churches.
I was, because we just had this conversation at my own church about that there are some people out here doing it really bad, and they are highlighted. Like, I mean, there are very few people who know who Vodi Bakum is. Like he's a big dude, right? But he just passed away, but nobody recognizes him. They'll recognize Mike Todd, they'll recognize Jamal Bryant, but Vodi Bakum was just as big as these dudes in the community. It just so happens that he was not a social media type of person, right? They stopped letting him come on TV because he was speaking the gospel in the form of how the gospel should be talked about. And so I would say the liberal church, because I wouldn't say that it's the black church, because I couldn't say that, because I've been to black churches that are teaching the gospel and they don't even talk about who you should vote for. Like, it's not even a conversation. I've been to those churches. And I've also been to white churches where we're not having a conversation about who you vote for. Who you vote for is who you vote for. I'm gonna put up on the stage what both candidates believe in, and this is what we identify with as a church. And so that's the only part that I have pushback on, is that we identify and from my peer view, who the wolves are, as opposed to the people that are actually trying to do it right.
Yolanda Adams just said that God is genderless.
Right. Like exactly.
Yeah, I will say I don't think we can say, like, we can just call a spade, like black church. It's cool to say black church. I mean, black people.
No, because you have people like Joel Osteen, who would be put in the situation of a Jamal Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, are you saying like them as like a minority or like of a exception?
I would say from being around a lot of churches, I would say that it would maybe a 60-40 type of deal or a 70-30 type of deal as it relates to people actually out here teaching the word, right? Living and trying their best to live it out. You feel me?
Yeah, I guess I understand what you're saying of teaching the word, and it's probably like still a lot of black churches that's not with that gay shit. I'm talking about, from what I gathered from what the perspective was, is that politics have seeped into the church, into the black church. Now, they all might not be on the gay part of the politics, but black people in general are overwhelmingly Democrats. So I do think it's only reasonable that, yeah, like absolutely, politics have seeped into the church and maybe started to sway opinions and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can understand that peer view. I'm saying that's because most of the people probably are getting their information from these pastors that are on like Instagram and social media. Is what I'm saying. But like if you like, I'm more heavily connected to a lot of different churches, right? Just have been for a long time, and I have spoken out against preachers that don't deliver the word based upon how it should be studied, right? So I was at the point of where I would say black church, that I was at that point, but I've been to other churches and listened to other doctrines of people talk to be able to say that there are a lot more people that are talking about the gospel and not being infiltrated by politicians. That's what I'm saying, as opposed to the other part. And I do understand but black people have been voting Democratic, for the past 90% or more since civil rights, and that was the goal for it to happen.
Yeah,
but it start at the church though.
Yeah, I think it's. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was about to say. Oh, go ahead.
Do you feel like the church, the black church, should be doing a more intense job from keeping politics to have its hold on the church?
Yes, I think this is what I think, right? I'm not with Republican or Democrat. I am more conservative than anything, though. I think that more people should read the Bible and live out the Bible, and people will see, based upon how you live it out, of how you should vote when you decide to vote. Because what is going on is that people are not reading their Bible. So when the pastor is talking, they don't even know that the Bible, that he's not even in the word, right? And so he will talk about, like, a guy named Freddie Haynes. I don't know if y'all know who he is, but Freddie Haynes is here in Dallas. He's
Frankfurt West.
Thank you, sir. He's trying to run for, he's Black Power, right? He has Black Lives Matter on his church. You feel me? And so that means he wants everybody to know to lean towards Democrats, right? But that's not what Jesus was about. Jesus was against the government all the time. That's what the issue was. So he didn't take a stand on being a Republican or a Democrat, even though that wasn't back then. He just talked about living out what the word says. So I think they should get more back to, like, read your Bible and do your best to live it out.
What?
No, I think at the end of the day, these people are humans. And I think most humans don't possess the ability to be completely impartial, or at least impartial to a great extent. It's like saying that politics aren't in schools, right? It's like, all right, well, does the teacher vote a certain way? Do they believe in certain things? Or they do? Most likely, most of those teachers not going to be able to keep their personal opinions and their preferences out of what they do. Even if they try, like most people just don't possess that ability, if that makes sense.
Politics is in school, though, just by the way.
Do y'all feel like when you were in school, do you feel like politics was less in school?
I didn't pay attention when I was in school, so I can't even. I don't know what they was talking about.
I think it was less in school from my perspective.
I would say yes. As far as if you're talking about, go ahead.
Yeah. I would say I think politics was less extreme. So positions like a man can only be a man was agreed upon by everybody, and it wasn't a political debate about it. So it didn't seem like something we had to discuss. Now that the politics surrounding that say that men can become women, they're affirming that in school and supporting that in various degrees. So it's just, I think the world has shifted in a way. I think it's probably just as political. It's just we didn't disagree as much as we do. Like I think there's no middle ground as it is now.
I think the dynamic changed. I think more sort of dynamic change where it was like, because I mean we had politics. We had a mock vote. I remember Jesse Jackson winning in the school. You know what I mean? So it was there, but the dynamic was different. Like M. White just told us, that type of stuff, that was not part of it. That was never part of the program. It wasn't like deep dive. We weren't so passionate about it like that, right? It wasn't so divisive, like where we had these hard political IDs and we didn't hate presidents. You know what I mean? That wasn't a thing. We were not that passionate about it. We were more concerned about children's stuff. We learned a lot about it in history, but we were not this infused into it without even knowing anything. Because I'm not saying that they know much more. They just are way more passionate about it and probably know less about it than we did.
I remember growing up, it was rude to ask somebody who they voted for, and it was just known to be private. Well, not in the black community. I think we also, but like white people, to me, like you ask a white person who they voted for, they be like, "Why are you asking me that? Don't ask. That's private. Don't ask me that." But like, of course, like all black people, they're like, "Yeah, you know who I voted for," type situation. But yeah, it wasn't as polarizing and like as it is today.
It may have been, well, probably not for us in the youth. It wouldn't be polarizing, but yeah, I remember the idea of asking somebody who they voted for was kind of like mad taboo. Like maybe, I mean, obviously I wasn't voting at the time, but I'm sure adults probably had a conversation to where it was like, yeah, I mean, you already know, it's not a big deal. Our particular social position is so much different, probably than 30 years later, that it's like it's obvious that we're gonna roll in lockstep. And now today, to M. White's point, we even have questions as to what is gender. So now you're gonna have more splinters and it's gonna be more intensified. Seems like just back in the day, we were understanding of basics and just had more substantive shit to do than talk about something that should be commonsensical.
Yeah, I remember the first election that I was old enough to remember, I think was Bill Clinton, when we had the mock election for it. And they was talking about he was the first black president back then. I don't know if y'all are old enough to remember this, but they was like, oh, he played the saxophone. He a black president.
Yeah, I thought that shit was stupid.
That's how they sold it to us, man. Like,
they was hyping Buddy up.
When you think about it, I mean, with us having these phones, like before, I'm trying to imagine like being an adult back then. It's probably like, all right, you wake up, you might watch something before you go to work. If that, you go to work, you get home at a certain time, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, probably the news come on. And that's when you're getting your dose of what's going on if you want to watch it. Versus right now, it's like all day, if you consume any political content, it's going to be on your phone. You're going to be seeing it every 10, 20 minutes when you pick your phone up. So that might have something to do with it also. It stay on your mind.
For sure. Yeah, we had more stuff to do. We were busy doing something else besides being in contact with the screen and news all the time.
Thank you.
More of this clip.
Communism. Right. So he took the way things are, the way he wanted things to be, and then he synthesized them into this kind of American Christian package that he knew most people would have a very hard time in their American Christian consciousness arguing against, 100%. Which is that we should judge people by the content of their character.
Yeah.
Our movement is a movement of peace and love. So that's the tactic that he used to try to convince people that his movement was justified.
100%. And it didn't start with him. I mean, it started, like, if you look at the writings of Earl Browder in the 1930s, he was the leader of the Communist Party who was advocating for communists to infiltrate both Catholic and Protestant seminaries, as well as Catholic and Protestant churches. When you look at Bella Dodd's book, she wrote a book called The School of Darkness, where she admits that she was a participant in assisting in the infiltration of seminaries and churches. When you look at the writings of Fulton Sheen, the fact that Marxists were able to infiltrate the church is well documented. There's a plethora of information out there that solidifies that. And then King is part of that because of his training, both in his upbringing as well as his formal education. When you look at people like George Davis, who was one of his professors, who was a proponent of the social gospel, who basically taught King how to mask his Marxist sensibilities through the social gospel behind the pulpit. And then too, when you look at his denouncement of Marxism and of communism, this is interesting because anytime I talk about King's infatuation with Marxism and communism, one of the biggest pushbacks I get is, well, he said he wasn't a communist, as if communists don't lie, for one. But then two, if you look at King's writings on denouncing communism and the reasons that he give, what you'll find is that they were not words that originated with him. He plagiarized a theologian by the name of Robert J. McCracken, who wrote a book in 1951 called Questions People Ask. And he writes about why communism is antithetical to the Christian faith. And so rather than King coming up with his own idea of why he rejects communism, he simply plagiarized and lifted verbiage from Robert J. McCracken, which begs the question, at least for me, why not give your own words as to why, if you detest communism so much, why not use your own words to say so?
Yeah.
Why plagiarize someone else to explain it? And the reason why he would do that is because Marxists are utilitarian. And what this means is lying is just a tool in the bucket for them to.
Yeah. That's why we couldn't trust anything China said during COVID.
Exactly.
They don't have the same ideas about integrity or honesty for the sake of honesty. It's more, what is going to get me to the goal that I want?
Right. And I think the nail in the coffin on it is when you look at all the times King was asked, well, are there communists in your movement? He would always
want to say something, Marcus?
Yeah, what he just did was slick and disrespectful. So what he did
was, you caught that?
Yeah. So again, as if he's never quoted somebody or heard somebody explain something that he agreed with and used them as a catalyst. I think I quoted Jay-Z and Nipsey Hussle in various conversations, and to ask why would I use them instead of using my own words in a particular question if they framed it in a better way than I could have is disingenuous. But the way he framed why he used it, he didn't insinuate, he flat out said that he used his words for enough, not because he explained it best, but because he's a communist, and communists are inherently liars, and they're inherently immoral, and they inherently don't have the morals and the social goodness of us.
She talked about the integrity. She talked about the integrity, and that's the part where I was like, wait. You could look at either side and determine that there are large portions of a lack of integrity. So if I use your tactics in order to get something done, that's so bad now.
And is white supremacy based on integrity? Is that concept?
That's why I'm saying That's why I'm saying I'm not really tripping about the whole Rosa Parks thing. Like I understand we found out how the recipe was done and we're not happy with the recipe. It's not perfect. Okay.
Yeah, that's like saying, damn, y'all put mustard in there? Shit.
Yeah, like
did you like it?
You're a communist. Oh no. All right.
Yeah. And when they use certain words like plagiarize, that's an accusation at that point.
Yeah.
You saying something way bigger than just, quoting somebody. Plagiarize is unauthorized usage when you are lying about it.
Like Melania Trump with Michelle.
Right.
And Michelle might have got it from somebody else. Wow.
Yeah, the insidious thing that's done is like the way propaganda works is he literally did what he was insinuating them that he accused the communists of doing.
Right.
Through slow, monotonous.
Yep. And he finally got to it at the end.
He got to it at the end. That was a textbook finesse. Like, but if you wasn't watching it, you'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I was waiting on it. I was waiting on it.
So we say
it's a big projection.
We got a grifter calling someone a grifter.
That's absolutely what it seemed like he just did.
Essentially.
And this, I never seen him no place else, but this specific conversation, he definitely did.
Now, listen, I don't take away from any facts that he brought up as far as Michael turning to Martin and going to Germany and studying there and aligning with a portion of Marxism. I can't take that away. I think a lot of folks never heard that, probably wouldn't understand that, and it might trigger them. Go ahead.
DJ, I just want to make sure we include this because this has been bothering me the whole time we talk about it. They're framing Marxism as you're in an egalitarian system, and then people just want to take from people who did well. This is based off the back of slavery, and they're talking about at the time of segregation and Jim Crow. And this is not in a vacuum.
That's what I brought up in the first place. My question was, because Marxism is based on such a rapid separation of the haves and the have-nots, was there a common ground that Martin Sr. found between that, looking at slavery and Jim Crow in the United States? I don't see how those two can be so alien.
Yeah, like if he wanted to have a conversation about how you want to incentivize a market through capitalism or a form of capitalism, I'm all for that, because I do believe that you need innovation, and innovation does require a problem to be presented and an incentive-based system in order to attribute to the person who's innovating and producing and creating more products. No argument with that, but to act like that the basis of this argument isn't rooted in because they try and take like race doesn't matter and those things off the table to make the argument that you're in the position that you're in specifically because of the way you work throughout this world. When the position I'm in, a lot of it comes from things that I didn't specifically do myself. People helped me. Genetically, I was helped. I was helped in different ways. Like, so me to just look at somebody else and say, you should have just been me. I can't do that. That's crazy. like that's not a fair comparison. I don't know. That's
all right. Any final words? Going once, going twice. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. Make sure you hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel on your way out. We'll catch you guys on the next one.